In this following video, I am going to cover a brief workflow that I use as I'm blocking in the terrain in ChromEditor. This video is sped up about 200-250%, so you get a sense of how the initial environment comes together in ChromEditor. And when you're presented with a flat terrain inside the editor, it could be pretty daunting because you don't know where to start, you don't know how big to make the terrain. So this video will kind of give you a sense of the workflow that I use to get to blacken the environment in ChromEditor. And what I do is I have a sketch in front of me, and the sketch gives me an idea of what I need to do. So instead of thinking as I'm drawing out, as I'm blocking the terrain and figuring out inside the editor, I already know what I'm creating. I already know that the player has to get from point A to point B, and as I'm blocking all of this in, I know what the point A and point B are. So I'm beginning to form the terrain based on my sketch. And here you can see me, I turned off the fog so I can see the terrain a lot better. And once I'm done with the terrain, I'll turn the fog back on, but it just gives me a better, clear vision inside the editor. So you can see me using the high tool quite a lot, and I'm just bringing up, creating mountains and blocking in the player. So there's only so many ways that the player can go from point A to point B, and the mountains will give you a sense of blocking the player in so he can't go outside the world. And that's one of the big things, is you have to know how you're going to block in the environment around the player. So here I'm keep using the high tool. You'll see me use different brushes to create different peaks for mountains and hills. And I tend to, as I'm blocking in, I tend to turn the power down a bit, and then I'll turn up the fade. But during my initial block in, I just block in very roughly, and I'm trying to get a sense of the world, the scale, how big I want the world to be, and how big I want everything else around the player to be. You'll get to see me jump back to the player's point of view, and because I want to get a sense of scale of how big and massive the world is. And there is a lot of refining that I tend to do during this stage, and I try not to focus on any specific location, but I try to just jump all over the place, and I want to block in the terrain as fast as possible, because I want to get a sense of how long it will take to get from point A to point B and how big the world is. So I work all over the map and try to block everything in. So I'm continuing on, blocking in the rest of my terrain. And I want to mention once again that how important it is to have an idea before you create anything inside ChromEditor. Sit down and create a top-down sketch. Create a very rough version of what your map is going to look like from top down before you open the editor up, and it will save you so much time. So here, this is my point B. This is where the player will get to, and you can see me going down and kind of going all over the map and seeing this from the point of view of the player. So I'm trying to get a sense of the point of view as the player is going to walk and how big the environment is. So here I changed my brush, and now I'm kind of working to bring up the mountain peaks to a specific shape so they don't look so rounded. So now that I have my initial environment blocked in, so now that I have my different paths that the player could take to achieve the final goal, now I'm kind of going through and beginning to play around with the shape of the mountains. And again, I'm looking at my environment and seeing where I could start bringing the environment together, and where the mountain peaks could be high, where they could be low. and now I'm working within my environment. So the round of the environment has been pretty much blocked in. And so if I start playing, the player won't be able to get outside the world. So now I need to start creating more of a believable mountainscape. See, and once again, I am, jumping all over the map and seeing how it looks from different point of views, where the player will be, and beginning to kind of start uniting the environment together, but yet still not focusing on any one area. And here I'm also using a different brush. And here I'm using the ramp tool, so that's where the player could get from point A to point B. And I'm smoothing some stuff out, going back to my brush, to my hills brush. Also now I'm beginning to use relative height tool. So after a couple of hours worth of work, this is what I have with my terrain so far. There's still a few things that need to be fixed and tweaked, but the majority of the terrain is there, and at this point we can start adding models, we can start testing the gameplay and everything else. So I also changed the skybox. We had California skybox, and I changed it to Horizon Medallion. Let's jump in and just run around that terrain, see how it looks from the point of view of the player inside the game. So now we're inside the game, and let me just run through the map and see how it looks. So we can see that the majority of the terrain is there. So as we keep on going, everything looks good. There's a few things that need to be fixed, like with some of these mountains. They need a little more definition. But the important part is the terrain is there, and there's no major errors or major hang-ups in the terrain, and we are able to run through around our map. And here is where we started from. So I'm fairly happy with the terrain. I'm fairly where it's at. And next would be adding models, trees, and the rest of the gameplay elements.